Hi, welcome to the Senior Network. I'm your host, Greg Fulton. Today we're joined by Stephanie Birch of Hospice Care of the Lowcountry, correct?
Yes.
Glad to have you.
Thank you.
Neil Hunnicutt, Director of Community Relations, right at home. Good to see you. Well, we have two social workers on the panel today, so I'm sure we're going to have some very intriguing conversations. Tell us a little bit, Stephanie, about your role with a hospice company as a social worker.
Okay. I like to describe that role, it's kind of double-fold.
Okay.
So two different arenas. On the one hand, we could be talking about concrete needs, helping someone to develop an advance directive, power of attorney, living will. Maybe someone's looking for resources in our community, home-delivered meals, assistance with a utility bill. Sure. Maybe someone's looking to hire private duty caregivers because they need extra assistance, or even placement in a facility. So if we don't have anything concrete, the role switches to a counseling role. This is a very difficult time for patients and families.
Yeah.
We're not just looking at their physical being, but we're looking at them holistically, emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually. So we may need to help someone with some healthy coping skills as they journey through the end-of-life process,
Sure.
the patient or the family. We may be looking at some anticipatory grief, possibly caregiver stress. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we run into crisis intervention or maybe family mediation if the family's having difficulty with decision-making or allowing their person end-of-life self-disclosure. So it could be a multitude of things that you're helping them deal with.
How long have you been, I know you've probably been a social worker, but with a hospice organization, how long have you?
Full-time with hospice, about 8 years.
Oh, wow. So
Yeah.
you've got a lot of experience in this. What made you decide to go that direction?
That's always a good question. I personally believe that I've just been anointed to listen,
Yeah.
and that's a big part of the job. We're not there necessarily to change someone during this end-of-life process, but just to walk beside them.
I understand. And Neil, I know you with Right at Home, it's not always a hospice situation, but you do a lot of counseling and help with just talking with families, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Like Stephanie said, there's a lot of concrete things that we're looking at, when we're going into the home from a home care standpoint.
Sure.
We do a lot of supportive care for what these guys offer. They're in there, but when families need, 10, 12, sometimes around the clock type services, we go in and assess that and determine what we can do to put the caregivers in to
Sure.
meet those needs. But from a social work standpoint, what I offer people is, sometimes partnering with folks like Stephanie to find out what resources can we put in the home to help them maintain their independence and safety. And then sometimes it is counseling.
Yeah.
Sometimes it just really is sitting and listening.
Turns into that, right?
It does.
Yeah.
It really does.
Well, Stephanie, just give us an idea of what are probably some of the challenges in your role, and I'm sure there's different types, but.
Yeah, I mean, with the counseling arena, there's always challenges. A recent case, maybe.
Sure.
I had a spouse. He was taking care of his wife. They had a long journey with her illness. The last few weeks of her life were very challenging. So her sister came in to assist with the caregiving aspect.
Right.
She had not seen the entire picture. So they were definitely not in the same place as far as how her care was
Right.
being managed. So I did some mediation with them, allowed them to express their own views. Of course, provided reassurance that she was receiving the best practice care through our physician and our nurses, and then also gave them individual time
Right.
just to vent.
Yep. And I know, Neil, you spend a lot of time doing that, right? Just listening, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of communication that I do by phone with people that are out of state. I know you do too, Stephanie. We have families that they've moved here after retirement, but that means that they've relocated and left most of their family in different parts of the country. And so I'm on the phone sometimes a half an hour, 45 minutes with it could be a daughter who lives in the Northeast or California who is really concerned about mom or dad who's maybe living alone and
Sure.
Just very concerned about them. And sometimes there's no solution that we devise in those conversations. Sometimes it's just literally listening and reassuring those people that we're here to help.
Yeah.
And we're doing the best we can to do that and providing the resources. And it gives them sort of like a feet on the ground, so to speak, knowing someone's going in and looking after their folks.
Sure. And I know, obviously, the two of you work very closely together, too, right? With the same families a lot of times, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that would typically, I know from a standpoint of a referral, Right at Home would be taking care of someone, and unfortunately you get to a point where the hospice name may need to be called in. And is that directly someone that you would reach out to Stephanie, or
Yeah.
just someone that you would?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, what I would do in a situation like that is, you know, someone is at the end of life, and you know, we're not the experts
Sure.
at Right at Home when it comes to hospice care. So we understand it, we communicate, but we want people to have a consultation with someone like Stephanie who can more expertly explain what hospice really is, because there's a real, I think, a big misconception sometimes about what hospice services are.
Yeah, we
what
talk
they
about a lot
provide.
that word's not a bad word.
Right.
It's
Right.
really not. Yeah. It means a lot of. Brings a lot of, like you said, from a social work standpoint, not just dealing with the patient, but all the family members.
Absolutely.
And that's
Absolutely.
a big burden to kind of take ownership of, you know.
Another part I think people don't really realize in hospice is we also have bereavement counseling. So we follow a family for 13 months after the death of a patient. We do one-on-one counseling with the family members. We provide support groups. We also provide educational materials. We at Hospice Care of the Lowcountry are fortunate enough to have a dedicated bereavement coordinator, but we act as a team. She's a social worker, myself, we have another social worker and a chaplain that are all part of that team. Because not only do we provide that to our families, it's a community-based service. So possibly there's been an issue in a school system. We would go in and assist as needed. Or maybe someone lost a family member outside of hospice and they're struggling with the grief process. We provide that to them as well.
Very interesting. We'll talk more about that, but we need to take a break.
Sure.
Stay with us. We'll be right back here on the Senior Network.